Georgie made the size of my wallet grow. He fed the flow with lots of dough. Suddenly we're loving the status quo. Now that George Bush runs this town. He's giving us a reason to celebrate. He's filling us with pride. The gulf between the workers and the billionaires has never been so wide. Georgie made the size of my wallet.
Hello and welcome to Dead Air Live. I'm your host, Robin West. Tonight we have some really illustrious guests with us. We have Sensory Dolaire, Rich Be Richer, Princess Between Princes, the Reverend Dr. Cassius King, and of course, Ostentatious. Why are they here? All to discuss Billionaires for Bush, a very interesting sounding organization. But gentlemen and lady, before we get into that organization, I'd like to hear a little bit about each of you. So please introduce yourselves, give us some of your history, and why you're here today for our studio audience and our viewers at home.
I'll begin, Robin.
Thanks, Austin.
Absolutely. You know, as Robin said, my name is Ostentatious. I was born a very, very rich boy, and I've grown into a very rich man, I'd have to say. My family has a history on Wall Street, but basically with our economic clout, we've moved to take over almost every sector of the economy. There's a Tatius in there somewhere. So that's a little bit about me, Robin.
You sound pretty proud of that history, Austin.
I would have to say, yes, absolutely. We are very, very rich and very, very proud.
All right, moving on to the Reverend Doctor.
Well, Robin, let's see. I have a long history, a long journey back down to Savannah, Georgia. I've lost my southern drawl in the process of coming up north, but I am from Savannah, Georgia. My father was a wealthy southern gentleman, and my mother was a wealthy southern belle. It was a fabulous childhood, I must say. We owned many mansions. We owned just about everything in the town, but what really got me going and the energy, what the Hindus would call my dharma, is when I realized my purpose in life was to become a reverend, the Reverend Dr. King. Because you see, Robin, I have a dream that one day our children will not be judged by the content of their character, but by the content of their stock portfolio.
Huzzah!
Huzzah!
Amen.
Thank you. And this is a dream that has been pushing every moment of my life to make sure that's coming true. And that's why I'm in Billionaires for Bush, because no one, no president, and no man has ever made sure that my dream will come true as much as George W. Bush. And it's a pleasure to be here, Robin.
All right, thank you, Dr. King, sacrificing the content of your character for the stock options. And now, Princess, please tell us what brought you here today.
That's Principessa, not princess.
Oh.
My daddy was in oil, and he wants me to speak up for our current president, President Bush. And they said I could do a song. So that's why I'm here.
Oh, and we're so glad to have you, and we'll be having you sing that song in just a little while. We're all so grateful to have your gifts on the show. Rich Be Richer, tell us your story.
Oh, thank you, Miss West.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to talk about the future rather than the past. We're a little embarrassed about the past, but the future, we want to now tax all emails. Because have you been bothered by junk mail? I'm sure many people in the audience have. If you could just pay us 1 penny for each email, we won't have any junk mail anymore. And I promise you, I will use that money well. So I hope that this appeals to the audience to stop junk mail and tax email. Thank you very much.
Now, Rich, I'd love to let this slide, but I simply can't. You say you're embarrassed of the past. Tell us more about that.
Well, I wasn't as rich as these people. I wasn't.
That's all right.
But I've had to find ways, like Rupert Murdoch and Bill Gates, to make money myself.
So you're saying you've earned your way into the spot as billionaire?
I'm
Oh, gosh.
sorry to say that, but I don't want to tell you how, but I want to have to admit that.
Okay, we've got some new money in the house. Well, thank you for being a little bit vulnerable with all of us here today. That's very meaningful. Sense-free.
Thanks, Robin, for inviting me. A little bit about my background. I grew up with Jeb and George W. in Midland, Texas, and a recent magazine, a little ragtag for inquiring minds called The New Yorker, tried to put us down last month saying we were all rich sons of oil prospecting millionaires from the Northeast. Well, I say I'm proud of those humble origins. I feel fine about that. Yeah, my father, my grandfather, they had money, and right now I'm a CEO of Probe Incorporated. To me, this country is like a big vagina, and it needs to be invested with Probe Incorporated. And the biggest investment right now is George W. Bush.
Huzzah!
Ho!
Huzzah!
Let's hear it for George. Amen.
Huzzah.
Amen.
Amen, brother.
George W. Bush, your next best investment. Let's talk more about that. What actually have you all invested in George W. Bush as our current president?
Well, I'll speak to this point if I may, Robin. You know, we invested a paltry $200 million in George W. Bush's 2000 campaign. Paltry to us, perhaps significant to the common American. I don't know. I don't see much of them, and frankly, I don't care to, although I do smell them a little more than I'd like to. Anyway, this investment has resulted in about 1.1 trillion in tax cuts since he's assumed the presidency for the upper class, aka us.
Daddy calls that leverage.
And how much did you receive in that tax cut, Austin?
Well, Robin, in public television, I don't want to disclose much about the state of my finances, but let's just say Papa's got a brand new Learjet.
Well, a brand new Learjet must cost quite a sum. I would say that everyone owning over making over $1 million from that 2001 tax cut received over $50,000 in a rebate, whereas families, 80% of American families only received $350. So I'd say that's a remarkable tax break that you got in the 2001 tax cuts. Now, what have you all done with that?
I just want to say, if I may, Miss West, before we go into that I would hope that all the viewers understand that you too could get that tax cut. Because we're here today to let you know that one of you in this country can also become a billionaire, just like I did, just like Bill Gates did. And so you too could get a $50,000 or $70,000 tax cut.
Well, now. It sounds like you're suggesting that everyone in America can earn their way into becoming a billionaire. So before we get to that point, why don't you all tell our audience, what is Billionaires for Bush all about? What is your organization, and why are you members?
Well, that's an excellent question, and as Ostentatious was saying here, Robin, we received $1.1 trillion in tax cuts. That's 150 times larger than the average American. And I think the message we want to send home here is that George W. Bush knows who his sugar daddy is, and George W. Bush cares about his daddy. He cares about the Almighty, and he cares about what they talked about in the Bible. Now, who did they listen to in the Bible? They listened to the prophets. And that's what we billionaires listen to as well. We listen to the prophets. And George W. Bush cares about our profits, and he wants to make sure that we profit to the utmost potential of our ability, and he's making it happen. Now just to,
Amen, brother.
Well, thank you. And just to add to that, it's been a very unfortunate circumstance for us. We are a minority that has been pushed into the closet, and they've made us feel ashamed for being rich, for being billionaires. And in the last 50 years, you'll see all these people coming out of the closet. You'll see African Americans. You'll see women. You'll see mothers. You'll see gays. All of them coming out of the closet to announce who they are. Well, it's time that we no longer live in shame. It's time that we billionaires come together and we say we are proud to be rich. We are proud to be who we are.
And unlike Mr. Kerry, George Bush doesn't pander to the vested interest of average Americans. We don't settle for that.
Amen. Amen.
We're A1 produce. That's
And
what we
instead
are.
he panders to the interests of billionaires?
Billionaires, sure.
Of course.
We're
And Robin,
family.
we are a special interest, a very, 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 very special, with lots and lots and lots of interests. But hey, we're the ones pulling the strings. And with our money, we can keep George W. Bush in office. And as long as he stays in office, we keep getting more money. Now, to get back to your question, that's who the Billionaires for Bush are. We are an elite group of a who's who of corporate America, and we are determined to keep George W. Bush, our nation, not our nation, excuse me, our 1% of the nation's absolute best investment.
Now you say
Ostentatious, it really is our nation. Let's be frank. Just like our president is frank.
Now-
Other presidents have hid the fact that they were for the wealthy. George W. Bush is an honest man, and it's clear to all America.
And we are the 1 to 2% that owns at least 40%.
That was going to be my next question.
40% of the money, of the wealth in this country. I'm
That's
so proud of it. I can
that's not
smell
enough.
it.
How
We need
sweet
more.
it
Glass
is!
fences.
And,
We
and-
need
yeah,
more.
that's right. That's right. And it's George W. Bush that is giving us the courage, because we finally have billionaires that are coming out of the closet and having the courage to come out of the closet and say, "We're here, we're rich,
And we're
Get
hot!
used to it.
get used to it." That's
Now,
right.
Dr. King, you make it sound like billionaires in this country are an oppressed, marginalized group. You
There's
compare
been some of that.
yourselves to so many groups that have lived through decades and centuries of oppression. Now, is that really true?
Oh, we're criticized. We're criticized.
was a
We're looked
criticism?
down upon. People talk about what we're wearing all the time, and they make nasty remarks. I really
Like
think that's uncalled
guilty.
for. Uncalled
Yeah.
for.
That
You
makes
don't
us want to
think they
build
should-
walls around our castles. We can't go out and be with the average person because they got judgment calls against
Well,
us.
I'd say you can probably afford a couple extra chateaus, so it wouldn't be too bad of a deal if you
It
had
would be
to
nice
do
if we didn't
private
have
place.
to afford them, but we do.
Miss
for our
West, do I
protection.
detect a little jealousy in your question?
Well, I wouldn't say it's jealousy. I'm just a little bit lambasted by the fact that you all here have suggested that your group of billionaires is as marginalized as so many other groups have gone before that have had to fight to really gain their rights. And you seem to own your rights. I mean, you're owning a lot here. I'm just a little bit taken aback. I mean, $1.1 trillion.
It's a little bit like George Bush's slogan that a good friend of ours wrote for him, no child left behind. Well, in this case, it's no billionaires left behind, because this time we came out, we are the children of George.
Well, let's talk about No Child Left Behind. Currently, right now, there is $399 billion being invested in the Pentagon, while only $34 billion is going into education. So I ask you, how do we leave no child behind when we're leaving a lot of them behind with the kind of federal spending like that?
Education. Look at George. George didn't even need an education. Could have saved a lot of time. Saved a lot of people time just skipping over that altogether. Just use your senses. Go
Exactly.
with it. Your
Exactly.
sense for making money.
And you know, Rob,
Same as making love.
Thank you, Reed. Thank you. Yeah, you know, every one of these kids, not everyone, but let's say 99 out of 100 are just going to wind up in, you know, lower service jobs anyway. I say the way we leave no child behind is to identify the billionaires right away, send them to private schools like we already do, and then for those who are in lower brackets, just create some sort of work-study program where we start them gardening and cooking
Working.
and cleaning right away,
That's
even
right.
at the age of 5. We're already doing it in other countries.
I mean,
Let's bring it to the
sounds
United
like
States.
you're suggesting that we impose a caste system in our society, a class-based system where children are relegated to certain spheres of work, occupations, and salaries from the time they're born, without any opportunity
Security
to move beyond
forces.
that. Is that what you're suggesting, Austin?
You know, I hadn't thought of it that way, but the way you said it now just sounds great.
Robin,
yeah,
you are
that's
a
exactly what we
brilliant-
want.
you
You're
are-
sharp as a
you
tack.
You might be
really
the one.
are.
You might be the one that can join us, Robin.
Okay, but we live in a democracy, a democratic republic.
She's funny too.
Bravo.
I'm sorry. I try to believe that that's no longer a joke, but apparently you all think that democracy is a joke
Oh
and a sham.
no.
no,
Democracy.
no.
Yes, you were
No,
saying.
we
Go
honor
on.
democracy.
Democracy, compassion, it's compassionate, conservative, they all sound like wonderful things.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It definitely.
But are we living those ideals out?
Well, right now, George is trying to get over our dependency on domestic labor. He's going off to other countries where kids are willing to work. They don't mind being up at a factory
God
at age
bless their
5 and
little
doing it.
hearts.
What the hell is a little boy with full of energy doing in school? But you want to be out there. You want to be doing things.
That's right.
You wanna
Making sneakers.
Make some money.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And you know, Robin, in the United States, there's this, we speak about this sham ideal of one person, one vote. What we're saying is that billionaires are the ones with the opened eyes. We know that it's $1, one vote, right? I mean, we're the ones with the influence.
And we have a lot of dollars,
We
so
do.
we have a lot of votes.
I have a lot.
I mean, a lot of people do say campaign contributions undermine our democracy and corrupt our political system. You seem to be in favor of that we should corrupt our democracy, throw it all out. What would you like to see instead?
A lot of people say a lot of things. I mean, some people use profanity. I don't really favor profanity, so I don't really know how to respond to that.
So you don't think it's legitimate that campaign contributions, who spends the money on a certain person campaigning for a political position, doesn't get extra say in what sort of policy agendas are put in place?
Well, they should. They feel so moved by the issue that they should put their support behind issues. I mean, my daddy spends a fortune for his senators.
Yeah, I think the princess has a good point. I mean, if you feel passionately enough about an issue, just, muster the funds needed to buy a congressperson to be your voice, and get your thing on the
Not
in the
just one.
Constitution. Yeah, sure.
And George is a long-term vision for government by a corporation, by and for the corporation, which represents a lot of business interests all over the world. And we're not just a nation of one country. We're the whole earth is ours, and we're going to make it happen.
Hey, we're
Four
gonna
more
make
years.
four more wars.
Four more wars.
And Miss West, it's not a caste system. It's meritocracy. If you're good, like you might be good, you could join us. One person is going to join us, just as Bill Gates did, just as Carnegie did.
Well, now, Richard,
just
are
as-
you suggesting that you want people to join you? I mean, if you have all
one.
this money,
One
One.
person.
Not
We
too
want
many.
one, not too many. Maybe one person each generation, and we don't want anyone to sell themselves short. It
Especially
could be it could be you, who's ever watching. If it isn't Robin West, it could be you.
I see her melting.
Don't
so you're
sell
suggesting the
yourself
American
short.
dream of working hard
Yes.
and making millions and billions of dollars is alive and well in this democracy?
Yes, just like
Absolutely.
lotteries.
For one person.
For one
For one person.
Yes.
There's a great man, I think it was Henry Ford, who said that all men are born equal, but the cream rises to the top. And there is one person that represents that little bit of cream.
And you all here are the cream.
Oh, absolutely.
We are.
We are
Of
the
American
10% who give
society.
90% of the campaign contributions in this country.
Well, now let's talk about that, because your campaign
That was it. I just
contributions
talked
are
about it.
substantial. Well, we're going to move beyond that, because what do you want when you put your money in? The environment, for example. What have you all pushed for?
This is the environment. We're in the environment. What are you talking about?
What about the
environment?
natural environment or natural resources?
The what?
Natural resources?
I think
We
she's
want
talking about
access to
the
them.
dolphins
Yeah.
thing.
The dolphin.
We want
the-
access
The
and
porpoise.
control
Right.
to
Because you
over
all
our
contributed
environment.
quite a bit to the Bush campaign.
The dolphins
and you
are
received some in
very
return.
lovely animals. They're cute.
They're beautiful. Yeah, they're beautiful. I've seen
They've
pictures
grown
of
in
them.
aquariums.
Yes.
And what have the caribou ever done
yeah.
for us?
Okay, moving beyond the dolphins and the caribou.
But
I
no,
mean, there's
about
some
the-
substantial. Go on, Austin.
About the environment, I think the Bush campaign has just been great. Not that we'd expect them to be anything less. I think the Bush administration has been terrific in rolling back environmental laws, which make it easier for our companies to drill for oil or to, log old growth forests. Whatever it may be, they're rolling back environmental laws, which translates into profits for us, which translates back into campaign contributions for the Bush campaign, and I think I've laid that out very, very neatly. Right
I
now.
mean,
was very well
Austin, you
said.
couldn't have
Thank
said
you.
it better.
so
62
efficient.
environmental standards that have been enacted by previous administrations have been completely dropped. by the
62
environmental
environmental
That's it?
regulations that were
62.
oppressing us, and there are many more to go. You see, because I don't just love George W. Bush for what he's done in the last 4 years. I love George W. Bush for what he's going to do in the next 4 years. Because if you think that he bashed environmental regulations this 4 years, wait until you see Mother Earth, because we, the billionaires, are going to keep drilling, and we're going to keep going, and those environmental regulations that have been oppressing us and keeping us in the closet are going to disappear. The rights of workers, all these things that have been taking us down, pushing us down, are finally going to be disappearing, we're going to get the rights that we deserve, Robin.
Now
Because
you
let's-
seem. Go ahead, Austin.
I was going to say, because let's face it, we're making billions and billions of dollars, but with every environmental regulation that gets rolled back, we're in a position to make billions and billions more. Frankly, I'm surprised it's only 62.
But Austin, you must remember that corporate welfare is so much more efficient for this country than individual welfare. I mean, what would individuals do with welfare? What,
Milk,
yeah,
peanut butter. That's not going to help
and
the...
corporate welfare, that provides capital.
It does. And much finer food than milk and peanut butter for
So it's
us.
it's advantageous, you're suggesting, to reap profits for the top 1% at the expense of the health and the safety of the rest of us?
Dolphins are very cute animals, but you see, Robin, what's not cute is the oppression that billionaires have been facing.
Oh, I see. So the billionaires are facing oppression, but what about all of the people that have now gained asthma because of the loosened regulations on emissions?
Hey, they voted George in. There's more of them than us. Why is George in?
Actually, technically, Reed, they didn't vote
Well,
Georgian.
What do you
but
mean by that, Austin?
Well, a lot of them did.
Well,
there was a lot of controversy.
a lot of them did, but in the end, I think the ownership of a certain branch of government that starts with a J and ends with judicial had a little something to do with the results of that election.
Let's move on to that little branch of government. What does that relationship look like? I mean, I've heard a lot in George W. Bush's recent campaign speeches, really concerned that if a Democrat like John Kerry's elected, he might get to appoint justices, which might undermine his relationship with the current Supreme
Please,
Court.
you're scaring the lady.
Don't you think it's a little bit problematic when a president has such close relationships with the justices? I mean, Dick Cheney went duck hunting with Justice Scalia. Come on now.
That was to,
Isn't
that was
that
to
ridiculous?
learn about the environment.
That was
How do we
Exactly.
protect
First,
our
they
justice
take us to
system?
task for
Yes,
not liking
yes,
the
I think you're
environment.
flip-flopping here. I think you're doing exactly what that John Kerry
I
does.
see.
First, you're speaking for the environment, and now you're speaking against it. You're saying that a little exploration into the environment that Dick Cheney and Justice Scalia did is somehow bad. I just don't see the connection here. It's exploring the environment.
I think you're missing the connection, actually, Dr. King, because it's not the environment and duck hunting that's the problem. It's duck hunting with Justice Scalia when, in fact, you want him to push a major lawsuit against yourself, being Dick Cheney, and Halliburton, so that it doesn't conflict with your campaigning.
Robin,
With your
Makes
election.
sense.
I mean, I see
Yeah.
that's undermining our justice system. How can you
Okay,
deny that?
so it's undermining our justice system.
Ah.
Flog me in the morning.
You seem very unfazed by this, Sensory.
Robin, to speak a little bit more, I'll sugarcoat it a little bit to make it easier for the viewers to hear. Washington is a complicated, busy place, and sometimes it's tough for a vice president to get the message across to the justices he owns. I think a duck hunting trip is the perfect opportunity for a vice president and a Supreme Court justice who are in bed together to spend a little bit of alone time so he can communicate his desires a little bit more clearly to Justice Scalia. So, I think that's what was going on there. It was a chance for them to communicate with each other about what the vice president really wanted from the judicial branch.
And Dr. King will let us know, I imagine that, God created oil and ducks. For what purpose, Dr. King?
Yeah.
Why did God make gas and oil in the world except for
should
what
be
we
interesting.
use?
So that human beings could use it. And that's what we've been doing since the beginning of time. That's what mankind has been doing. That's why we've been put on the earth. And that's what the economy created human beings to do that type of thing. And that's why we are serving the economy.
All
And,
human beings?
well, the cream that rises to the top. you
Exactly.
see,
And
you
I
see.
don't think it'd be going too far to call the rest of them not really human.
I would say that using the term subhuman or any of those terms at this stage of the game is considered politically incorrect.
Okay.
But that's only because of the kind of oppression that we've been facing since people like FDR. But when George W. Bush undoes these environmental regulations in the next 4 years, when he forgets about the American worker, when he does away with Social Security and all those things, we can finally start calling a spade and saying that these people are subhuman.
I
Yes,
mean, I think, Dr. King, you point to an important fact, which is that even though you may not be calling people subhuman, you are treating them that way. I mean, let's just look at the casualties of Iraqi citizens, of American soldiers that have died in the war right now. I mean, we have currently Over 900 American soldiers have died in Iraq.
943,
Over
I believe is
11,000
the- yeah.
Iraqi civilians have died. Over 11,000 Iraqi civilians. That's not even counting anyone in their armed forces. I mean, clearly you're not holding life with much value.
Robin, to that I'll counter that we've made over $251 billion in defense contracts, much of which goes to the billionaires at the top who own them. So, I mean, to me, everything in life has its cost. And this one seems worth it to us.
People
right,
die,
that's right.
Robin. all
You know,
the
if
time.
you're gonna make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs. And really, to speak to something, Robin, you look like someone to me that would believe in something called honor, and something called
I
honor.
certainly believe in
You know,
honor.
in the satisfaction of being honorable, and to know that what you're doing out there, what you're fighting for, is making us richer, is making the people with money richer, which is the most just thing you could possibly be doing. Then the amount of honor that you have, I salute that. I salute that. You are doing something that sub people, which will be a new term for a new presidential administration. We don't really want to use that term just yet, but I'll use it. I'll use it right now. Ostentatious started it. That sub people, it's the greatest contribution that you can make to society. What honor.
Sacrificing your lives and your families for the profits of billionaires. That's an honorable
what's
Not,
act.
not our lives.
on.
Yeah, that's yeah.
You use the term your. It's not our families and not our lives. Just to clear that
Do
up. for the
any of
record.
you know anyone currently serving in Iraq?
I had someone working for me working on the program to tax email.
And so how does that feel for you to have someone go over to Iraq and serve over there for your own pocket?
Charlie had an opportunity to die for the wealth of our country. What could be more honorable? He will go, I think Dr. King will say what will happen to him, Dr. King? What people like that who have had the opportunity to die?
Heaven.
Heaven?
Interesting. You all seem pretty confident that George W. Bush is going to be reelected. Let's talk about that. Where is your confidence coming from? Numbers in the polls show that it's pretty tight race. Why are you so sure George W. is going to have a second term?
Well, the great thing is that we control the media as well. It's another sector we've got our hands pretty deep into. So, we can put out the kinds of messages that John Kerry was a flip-flopper, that he wasn't really a Vietnam War hero. Controlling the flow of information has really just done wonderful things for us, and we aim to keep it up till election day.
I have to differ here. I have to differ. I mean, we do control a lot. We do control a lot. I'm going to be vulnerable for a minute.
Please.
It's something that billionaires aren't always, but it is something that a man of the cloth should do from time to time. And the vulnerability that I speak of, Robin, is that I want to be confident that George W. Bush will win. I truly do. But there are these people, there's 260 million Americans out there, and if they begin to get this idea in their heads that they're equal to us and that they should be treated equally, then they'll vote for John Kerry, if they make that connection. But if they could understand, and John Kerry is spreading this word with John Edwards, and they're trying to give better health care to these people. They're trying to make their air cleaner. If people begin getting this message, they might actually go out and vote. And I'm already seeing that in the polls. I'm a very, very I'm a studious student of these polls, and they are worrying me because I don't see Bush winning in the polls just yet. And we cannot have another 2,000. I mean, if we need to reappoint this president, we will do it. That is Plan B. But Plan A is that he win by a landslide, and there's a chance. There is a chance that this plan could fail, and that's why the billionaires for Bush must get together and say, "Huzzah! Four more wars, 4 more years," and that's what we're doing to support our president. There is a chance that we could lose, and that's why we're putting ourselves on the line, and we're no longer being in the closet. We're no longer going to be oppressed. We're going to be speaking for ourselves.
Now, Robin, one of the chief issues is the war on terror.
Oh, yes.
Now, it would have been probably wise in a small sense of wisdom to just attack Al-Qaeda after they took down the World Trade Center. But our president knows that we need more terrorists. We need more terrorists in the world. There weren't enough. There were just a few. And so by attacking Iraq, we have galvanized the entire Muslim community to hate us. And with that fear, which pervades the entire American public, they, when they're afraid, will say, we want someone who had the courage to attack someone who had nothing to do with the World Trade Center. Mm-hmm. And so if he can attack them, he can attack anyone. Mm-hmm. And therefore, with that fear that our president has instilled in the American people, we are sure that we will prevail in 2004.
So you're looking for a leader or a puppet who can unilaterally attack any country for the profit of a very, very few very wealthy people.
But not only
that's your
profit,
position.
but also don't. I mean, we're creating terrorists so that we can have someone who can fight those terrorists that he's
Well,
creating.
now the right has been marketed as the moral center of America. Where's the moral center when you don't value human life? I ask you.
Ayn Rand wrote a book called The Virtue of Selfishness. That is my Bible, no offense, Reverend. And this is it. Let the buyer beware. You do what you got to do. That's it. People got to take care of themselves. We are like a wolf pack. We just can't help but howl. This is it. This is it. We're like a wolf pack. We're like a family.
How?
Could you all
People
do
got to
it?
fight their way
Howl.
in. And if people want to
Let's
fight,
howl.
Yes, let's howl.
No, you.
That felt good.
So liberating.
That felt good.
Thank you, Reed.
now listen, if people want to fight their way into our wolf pack, then they can start in Iraq. Go over there and fight there first. Then come to us. Come with the leftovers. Then we'll consider the situation.
What kind of leftovers are you giving to those that return from Iraq? I mean, the numbers I'm seeing, they come back, their jobs are gone, they've been outsourced.
And we cut veterans benefits too.
Indeed, you did.
Those jobs would have been gone anyway, whether they went to Iraq or not.
So how are you?
So
How
why?
are you?
What's your point?
How are you
I have some
promising a better
openings
life to
in my
those
security force.
veterans that come back from the war? How are you promising to repay them for the great honorable service that they've done?
We're promising better lives, Robin. Better lives for us. It's a promise we make to ourselves, and that's a charge to keep.
That's
I
right.
think,
That's right.
for-
That flip-flopper, John Kerry, said, why does George Bush not stand up like a man? Why can't he be like Harry Truman and say, the buck stops here? Excuse me, Robin, but...
That's an environmental term, by the way.
But what I was going to say here,
Buck
Reed,
stops
is that George W. Bush, though, is saying the buck stops here. The buck stops right here with George
Right
W.
here at
Bush's
this
sugar
table.
daddy, the Billionaires for Bush. That it's just a
Sugar
different
daddy.
definition of the word Bush, of the word buck. Excuse me. It's a different definition of the word buck, and that's what Bush is.
You are the
working
buck.
for.
You are the sugar daddy. You control everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on that note, I think now would be an appropriate time to have a little song to
This is
celebrate.
delightful. This is such a
waiting.
treat.
Entertainment.
This is such a treat.
Yes. Daddy spent a lot of money for these lessons.
Whenever you're ready, we all await.
The finest Evian she's drinking there.
Now this is a song by Craig Carruthers, but we haven't told him that we're going to be using his song because then we would have to pay his copyright. So, but we're thinking of using his song, so that should be enough for him. The world is shrinking. That's way too high.
Drop it down, sister.
Take it down. The world is shrinking, and I've been thinking how ominous the future seems to be. Everybody needs to make the sacrifice to simplify their lives, and that would guarantee more for me, more for me. You think it's not fair? Tell someone who cares, but who would that be? More for me, more for me. Give up what you've got, and there'll be a lot more for me. It'll be an adjustment, but I've always believed that everybody should give, and I should receive. 'Cause there's so many people, and it's plain to see. It would be best if you could take less and leave more for me. More for me. More for me. 'Cause there's never enough, so fork over your stuff immediately. More for me. More for me. Just give up what you've got, and there'll be a lot more for me. You can have squat, then there'll be a lot more for me. The world is shrinking.
Wow. Wow. That deserves a big hand. Our studio audience loved it. Loved it. You'd almost say that song is contagious. It really touches you, but you almost wouldn't want that because then too many people would want more for themselves, which would cut down on how much you all
I
have.
think you're a little too focused on content, Robin. Just let it in. Just let it in.
Just feel it.
I am so moved right now. My heart just feels like it was lifted out of this room and given wings that could fly to the highest
bracket.
Oh, tax bracket. Yes, where there are no taxes. Once our Georgie makes sure that there are no taxes for people in the highest tax bracket. That was just beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Well, we thank you. We have a question from the studio audience. Yes, please
They
tell
get
us
to
your
ask
name
questions.
and ask your question.
We want one person to join us.
My name's Barbara, thanks for...
Listen to how well she speaks English, and she's
Her
just
name
a
is
peon.
Barbara. Barbara, step
Very
into the
good,
mic,
Barbara.
please. Please, ask us anything.
I was recently working in an after-school program with 10-year-olds, and one of them had some food, and everybody else was hungry. And she wouldn't share, and she said that it wasn't her fault that nobody else had any food. And I was very disturbed by that and tried to get them to understand that they should share like we all learned in kindergarten. And I'm concerned that your message of more for me is trickling down into populations that it's really not helping. And I'm wondering if you could respond to
Thank
that. I
you,
mean, I'm
Barbara.
concerned that you've all lost the ability to feel the desire to help another person.
I didn't learn that in
Thanks,
kindergarten.
I feel that child has been abused by your evaluation of her. I mean, she's going with the philosophy or the feeling of more for me, and why shouldn't? That's a natural thing for a child to do. That gets battered out of them or abused by some kind of moralistic imperative of the teachers. That's why I'm against education, and generally speaking. But the should thing, should share. Where does should come in? Share if you want to share, but no should about it. Should on yourself.
You know, what concerns me about that story most of all is that little girl who's obviously of billionaire genetic stock is wasting away in some puny public school program where kids don't have enough to eat. Gross. And not with billionaires where she belongs. I mean, transplant this girl out of there. It sounds like she's a billionaire in the making.
She could be the
Huzzah
one.
for
She
her.
could be the one.
Maybe
Nicholas.
she's the
Yes.
one.
Give her a scholarship.
Maybe
Yeah.
someone here could adopt little girl.
So you all seem pretty intent on not sharing the wealth.
No, one
I
person.
feel pretty intent on helping this little girl.
Yes.
I mean, I think what Ostentatious has said to us is a very compassionate thing to share with this little girl.
thank you.
She
Yes, it
has
is.
she has vision and she has hunger. She has hunger. This little girl is hungry. She's hungry for power, and we want to make sure that all those that go hungry for power get that power.
No, let's leave no billionaire behind.
That's right.
That's right. She might be the one we're not going to leave behind.
Amen to that.
Send her a copy of The Virtue of Selfishness by Ayn Rand, my Bible.
Well, now let's talk about health care and these children. because not only are children perhaps lacking in food and other resources to keep them alive and healthy, but health care has been drastically cut. And Kerry proposes a very radical, or maybe not so radical, reasonable health care plan that would provide services at an affordable rate for a larger amount of Americans. Now, how do you feel about that? What are your reactions?
You know, there is all this hullabaloo about health care. I say, what about wealth care? What about caring about the health?
Welfare?
Wealth care.
Amen, brother.
Thank you. What about the well-being? What about the corporations?
Well, aren't you cared for enough? I mean, at $1.1 trillion in tax cuts, which are only going to increase over the next 10 years, whereas for the rest of those 80% of Americans only receiving $350, their tax cut is going to even decrease until they get nothing. I mean, don't you think that the wealthy are cared for enough?
No, not enough. Not yet.
You think that George W. Bush should go further?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, 4 more years.
He's just getting warmed up, right?
I mean, what about that untapped 60% of the wealth out there in the country that's now being wasted on the lower classes? I mean, we have to start making some inroads into that, I say. And
For the
4 more
next
years of a
generations.
Bush White House is...
And by lower classes, you mean the 99%
Yeah,
of
the lower
Americans
class.
that are sharing 60% of the wealth.
That's not fair.
Yeah.
Ms.
No.
West, we only have 40 and they have 60.
Not
Yeah,
enough.
Should be at least 50-50
exactly.
to start with.
Yeah, 2
Just a
classes.
start.
50-50 sounds like a very fair division.
Reasonable.
50 and
Yeah.
50, 1 and 2.
It's
And yet
diverse.
what we see is that things are very unevenly distributed. That it's not 50-50. We aren't all reaping similar benefits from our society, from our economy. When you say 50-50, you don't mean we all live simply with the same amount of resources. You mean 1% owns 50 and the rest have to share 50.
For
Live
starters.
simply. Yes, the rest live simply.
Well, we're talking about diversity, just like 50, half here, half there. That's all. I mean, you're co-opting it, our figures a little bit. I mean, we believe in diversity. We believe that with Dick Cheney and the oil wells are represented by Dick Cheney.
Okay,
and the oil
let's
wells
talk about Dick Cheney.
are
Let's
represented
talk
by.
about.
Let me finish my thought.
Okay.
And the oil wells are represented by George Bush. So there's diversity. 2 different, totally different companies come together and try to help out the world.
Okay,
That's
let's
right, he's a
talk
uniter,
about
not a
Dick
divider.
Cheney
Diversity,
and
that's right.
Halliburton. Excuse
Thank
me, no bid contracts. Thoughts?
Love them.
Yes.
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 Yeah, they're part
So
of the
efficient.
family. They're part of the wolf pack.
You don't have to have these conferences to decide. It's just very clear.
Yeah.
Right now, Halliburton is accused of doing business with Iran, Iraq, and Libya despite strict U.S. sanctions to not do business with these countries. You don't
Enterprising,
find
aren't
this
they?
a problem?
Yes.
At the same time, see, now here's where I see flip-flopping, if anyone is going to have it. You mentioned the war on terror is a huge deal. It's our biggest investment. This is where we're there, right?
Yeah.
So the war on terror is a good thing for your pockets?
Oh, yeah.
Completely.
There
And
must be an enemy.
in no way are you opposed to the fact that Dick Cheney and Halliburton, which he was once the CEO of, is
And is still
reaping
paid handsomely by
exclusive
the
benefits
way.
from this.
Corporations are bigger
$10
than
million in
are bigger than
startups.
countries. You got to think globally, Robin. You just can't be in the local kind of this country, that country. It's corporations are much bigger than countries.
Let's
That's
talk
right.
about
Act
foreign
locally,
relations.
think globally. That's
Let's talk about foreign relations. Are any of you related to foreigners?
I was. I'm in between princes right now.
Well, I used to live in Midland, Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not hearing much foreign relations from any of you.
Foreign relations. We have workers over in Iraq and Iran, and
Yeah,
Doing what
that's
we
right. And
can.
I mean, of course,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, the Saudi royal family's from another country, right? I mean, we.
Saudi Arabia.
Oh yeah. Right. We do business pretty heavily with them.
Yeah,
some of
there's
my
a relation.
companies.
There's a relation. You know, Robin. I just wanted to go back to your point about Halliburton. Halliburton is doing wonderful things for this country, but ironically, I don't feel like that Halliburton has to do wonderful things for this country.
Why is that?
George W. Bush has looked our people in the eye and said, "Ask not what Halliburton can do for your country. Ask what your country can do for Halliburton."
Amen,
He's
brother.
followed through with that.
We need to be serving Halliburton and the corporate interests of the elite.
That's what's been happening, isn't
And
it?
I'm
Long-term
glad you're using the word
interests, yes.
we, Miss West, because you
Oh,
might be
I
the one.
apologize. I don't want to
You might
include
be the
myself
one.
with
No, you might be
billionaires.
the
I
one.
am
You don't have
certainly
to just
far
be
from that.
Oh, Robin.
You don't have to be an interviewer your whole life.
Well, I think that if your system works as you originally prescribed, I would be working this job for the rest of my life. Is that not correct? There
No.
would be no working your way into another class,
Yes,
another
there is.
caste.
Ms. West, we keep saying that there is room for one more person this generation. We don't want you to have low expectations.
But
Reach
you
for
seem
the
to be
sky like we
suggesting,
are.
Rich, you seem to be suggesting, I hear you suggesting, that people can work hard, save their money, and then become wealthy. When the reality is, over the last 20, 30 years, real value and income has plummeted, and
mine.
the wealthiest 2%, wealthiest 20%, 5% have skyrocketed.
Bill
Why,
Gates.
why are you focusing so much on the reality?
You'd rather we focus it on what?
What? Well, I mean,
Because this is a reality for 99% of Americans.
the
This
re-
is the reality for their lives.
The
The
reali-
reality is they don't have education, they don't have health care, and they're working their butts off to try to get a house. But what? Is this a sob story?
It's
They need-
tiresome. It's
Yeah. They need to work smart, not work hard. I mean, who says that? That's their belief system about working hard. I don't work hard and I do all right.
reality.
Join us in this. Reality's perception anyway.
Exactly, and this country is
Especially
built.
when you
This
own
country is
media.
built, and if you have imagination, if you can see beyond just the pettiness of thinking about reality, you have the imagination, then you will be the one, Miss West, Miss
So
Robin
believe
West,
in a myth that you're going to be the one person.
and you may become the
And
one.
you may
person.
become like Bill Gates.
Ideal.
Yeah, and I sense
You
some-
could become.
That's right.
The
What
next
about
Ms. Gates.
what about something called optimism? Optimism. That's what we're looking for. If you're optimistic, you have that dream, you have that vision, you'll get there.
I'd say John Kerry's pretty optimistic. He wants to bring 10 million jobs into the U.S.
He wants to bring down the
That's
rights
social
of billionaires. And you know what? Something, Robin, is that he's not a billionaire, but he's a millionaire. And I don't understand how a man that could have so much money could be concerned with people who don't have money. This man is a class traitor.
Absolutely.
And
He
so
is
is his
a-
wife.
Oh, goodness.
Not a fan
Well,
Teresa,
she married
I
into
hear.
it.
He's pandering to the special interests of ordinary Americans, and quite frankly, we don't like it. I'd say if John Kerry gets elected president, the outlook for us is very pessimistic. And he talked so much about optimism in his acceptance speech at the DNC
Hope is on the way.
here in
Hope is on
Boston.
the
Yeah,
way.
hope is on the way. I'd say if that guy's elected, hope is out the window.
That's right. That's right. And
Yeah.
and you know, there's
Not pretty.
It's people like John Kerry in the Senate that have made. Well, this is a touchy subject. This is something that upsets me.
Speak on it.
I think you should bring
Talk
it
to
up.
us.
You know what? I don't think. You want me to talk about
No,
it?
please,
You want me
go
to talk
ahead.
about it?
Please.
Well, there is a man who's very close to my heart, and he's a great man, and his name is Kenneth Lay.
Can it lay?
Kenny
We all
Boy
know
Lay.
Kenneth Lay.
A moment of silence for Kenny Boy.
Thank you. Thank you. That was-
Yeah.
Now, for those who don't know, Ken Lay, head of Enron, gave more to George W. Bush than any single campaign contributor in the year 2000.
God bless him.
That's when I met him on the vineyard.
Yes. Ken Lay on the vineyard.
And what has he received in return?
What he has received in return is that George Bush tried to make it that he would receive lots of in return. He allowed Enron to write his environmental policy, his energy policy. He allowed for Enron to take from the state of California, and he allowed for Enron to do so many beautiful things. I mean, the fact of the matter remains is that I love George W. Bush, but without men like Ken Lay, there is no George W. Bush. Ken Lay is
Money makes the man.
Money makes the man. Ken Lay makes George Bush, because Ken Lay is money, and Ken Lay is now indicted for this.
What did he get? A jail sentence.
He's a martyr. You know what that means for me? Do you know what that means for my brothers and sisters?
Tell us.
That means that we too could be threatened just for our sheer creativity. We too could be threatened. When we are threatened, we too could be indicted. Now you're talking about oppression and how we're not oppressed. Miss Robin West, Miss Robin West, Miss Robin West, we are oppressed. It's a rhyme.
rhymes.
I think
hear compassion and concern in your voice, and yet you seem to have no regard for the
I'm
majority of Americans
I have-
trying to
I
make
have-
their lives in this
I have,
country.
I have a
Now,
great deal of
I
concern for this
can't
murder.
make sense of
This
that.
murder.
I'm
Y- y-
concerned.
let
Help me
ostentatious,
make
let
sense
ostentatious
of it.
respond.
Let me step in here.
Okay.
You know, John Edwards, much as I hate to invoke the name of that white trash pretty boy, says that there are two Americas. And he's right. We're one, and we own the other one. Now, you know, I really don't see how you can justify the expense, you know, the well-being of one class, the lower 99%, at the expense of the other class, the 1%. I mean, it's one and one. I don't get it, and quite frankly, I find it shocking, and I find it scary, and I don't think it has anything to do with compassion for billionaires.
So compassionate conservatism means for you safety nets for the top 1% of America.
Absolutely.
What are we conserving? Our wealth.
And we're making
You're
it.
not
want to
conserving the
express
environment.
a concern that
No.
I have. You know, after what happened to Martha Stewart, I don't dare talk to my broker. I just leave everything to my investment advisors, and if they don't achieve an appropriate rate of return, I fire them. I will not talk to a broker anymore. I don't want to take the chance that someone will trace some gossip back to me and indict me. That's ridiculous.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And you see, this is a country that was built. It's even in the song, "Purple Mountains Majesty." Purple Mountains Majesty. We do have majestic mountains, and I have been, Miss West. I have been to those mountaintops. I have been to those mountaintops. Dr. King has been to those mountaintops, and I have seen the majesty that is inside of those mountaintops. You
And
know what's
you would
inside?
rather
There's coal.
destroy those mountains
Well-
for your own profit.
But what I'm saying is the majesty of those mountaintops. You don't just look up the beauty on the skin surface. You go
Oh, I see.
inside. You look in the inner.
And what's
there's-
inside those
Inside is coal.
Mineral rights.
Inside is coal.
What else?
And when with inside all sorts of resources. And then when I had my minions, my underpaid workers, begin cutting down those mountaintops in those beautiful fields of West Virginia, these environmentalists started saying that's against the law. But then my president, George W. Bush, came down and said, we're going to change the law because let toxic waste run like rivers and mountaintops like a mighty stream. That's George W. Bush. Huzzah!
Huzzah.
And about the people, Miss West. I mean, by creating more terrorists in the world, by not spending money on our Coast Guard so these terrorists can come into this country, by not giving education to the poor, by having the water and the air difficult. In this frightening, terroristic, bad environment situation, somebody will have the strength to take, somebody who won't be afraid of mercury poisoning, someone who won't be afraid of bad water, someone who won't be afraid of terrorists attacking this country. Someone will have the strength to eventually join us. George W. Bush is creating this toxic environment in order to create someone who is able to take these toxins and survive the way we do.
And you are creating extinction.
Speak to us. Tell us your name, please.
No, I don't want to tell you my name.
Oh, you're anonymous. That's
Yes.
fine. Do you have a
Because there is
question for our
fear that was
panelists here?
created in this country, and unfortunately, people get killed for speaking.
Make sure you speak into the mic so that your voice can be heard as well, ma'am.
Tell us, what are your concerns?
Like you care.
What are your concerns?
Of course I can.
I am concerned that these people are creating the extinction of the human race, including theirs. If they look at history and the way the world was run, when the power is only in a few, these people end up being killed by the masses. So you are creating your extinction by creating anger in the masses, and you are creating extinction by killing the earth and the air and the water, which will then create your own extinction. So you are basically killing yourselves.
Thank you for that.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for your comments.
But Ree
Respond.
would tell us, we are not afraid.
No, we are like a wolf pack. This is the natural. You're talking about
You're not
extinction?
afraid of extinction?
No, this is the natural order. If I take an analogy of a book that I never read called Lord of the Flies, and I think of the Lord, and I think of Bush, and I think of the billionaires, that we are the flies, and then everybody else is the maggots. Now, if you want to move out of that maggotized state of mind and come up, then you better Well, I ain't gonna say who to vote for. You know that, but you need to stand up and fly right and, I don't know, praise the Lord. George!
And the Lord was and
the Lord is George
and
right
the
now.
Lord and Jesus was not afraid of extinction.
Here's a picture of George and the Pope, right here.
That's
There
right.
you have
Now,
it.
Jesus,
George
He's
is the
moving
Lord.
closer all
That's
the time.
right,
He's
that's
taking
right.
over that
Conclusive
relationship.
evidence.
George at the expense of our natural Earth and all of its inhabitants.
Look, can I
Is
tell you
that
something?
what you're saying?
Can I tell you
mean,
something?
that's what
Can
I
tell you
hear.
something?
Yes,
now, a lot
Cassius.
of things talk about extinction. This doomsayer over here is saying extinction, extinction, extinction. The dinosaurs are extinct. The Bible speaks of the apocalypse. All this extinction. You know what? If we're gonna go with a smile. Because you know what? If I stop doing what I'm doing, it's not going to stop all the other billionaires from doing what they're doing. We're just going to keep doing it, right? Am I right? So we have to enjoy it while we still got it.
All
And
right.
if God and Reverend, you can tell us if God gave us this wealth, we must deserve it.
That's
And if we die, we will go to heaven because
that's
God
ex-
is on our side.
we reach an immortality the likes of which blah-bitty blah, blah-bitty blah.
All right. I'm
We're
afraid
the
that's
elect.
we're
Yes.
going to have to wrap up. Last question. What is the single most important thing for this election this year? Biggest issue. One answer. Go. One word.
Wealth care.
Billionaires no longer being oppressed.
We need to buy more senators.
Senators.
Bush creating more terrorists so that we can be braver and take them on. Bring them on.
And sensory.
Look at the money. In God we trust.
And there you have it. That's Billionaires for Bush. Billionairesforbush.com. Thank you, gentlemen and lady,
Thank
for
you,
being with
Robin.
us today and for gracing us with your presence.
And please join us, billionairesforbush.com.
Because we need one more billionaire.
But only one.
And you could be
But
it.
you could be the one.
You could be the one.
And we are a who's who of corporate America, and we are organized.
Huzzah.
Huzzah.
Billionairesforbush.com.
Can we just end with one thing?
4 more years.
We're here. We're rich. Get used to it. Let's all say it
Who's
together.
that?
Let's say it all together.
We're here.
We're rich. Get used to it.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks
Robin.
for being with us today. Can't tell you how important it was. Thank you, studio audience. Thank you for your support.
Those Lakers.